Welcome to the Woke Church video series. My name is Eric Mason, pastor and founder of Epiphany Fellowship and president and founder of Thriving. With me again today is my brothers, my crew. We got here Jerome Gay, author of Renewal, pastor of Vision Church in Raleigh, and also a president of the Urban Perspective. We also have over here Brother Beran. Many of you know him by his beastly YouTube channel that has helped many people to work through their faith. He also does Sunday Seminary, which is a major way that people are getting entry-level, intermediate, and advanced understanding of apologetics to be able to do what Jude 3 says, and that's defend the faith that was once delivered up for us. We've been doing a series, and through this series, we've been talking about various things. This time, we're going to talk about pseudo-scholarship and intellectualism. When we talk about pseudo-scholarship, what we're talking about is people that read a lot, maybe read material that's not rooted in what we would call original sourcing or things that can be historically tracked in a way that helps us to recognize that the way they formulated their ideology, the way they formulated their philosophy, and the way they formulated their spirituality, even though it may sound good and may have some rhetorical structure to it, we would say that there is scholarship out there that's not actually solid scholarship, but we call it pseudo-scholarship, not quite scholarship, if you will. And so let's talk through that. One of the things that we see in the conscious community all the time, like I was listening to Ray Hagan this morning, just get ready for our time. And of course I listen to different people, and Ray Hagan is like mixing up, you know, talking about the Catholic Church and the Nicene Council in 325 AD. And I'm like, the Catholic Church didn't exist until like 700-800 years later during the Great Schism. And so I'm like, where are we getting from that the Catholic Church existed at that particular point? And then he's talking about Vatican II, comparing that in the lineage of councils, like the Council of Nicaea versus, and we'll talk about that in another video when we're talking about the councils, what we would say are proper ecumenical councils that was done by what we would call the proper lineage of the church from Jesus to the apostles. Right. What's you guys' thoughts on this idea of pseudo-scholarship? What irks you, and what are some things that we need to do to challenge pseudo-scholarship? Beran, let's start with you.
I think it's I think the conscious community, there's more pseudo-scholars in the conscious community than anywhere else. It's ridiculous. And I think part of the problem is they don't understand primary sources. Like you say, when Ray Hagan and certain people make statements about the Council of Nicaea, the average person that I speak to in the conscious community, I ask them, can you just name 5 or 10 people that were in the room? Yeah. What led up to the council? What are the primary sources for the council? They have no idea. Yeah. But they're going with secondary sources such as Ray Hagan and Dr. Ben and Ashwa Kwesi and Young Farrell and so many other people, and they're just saying a bunch of things. And I'm going to have to bring up Walter Williams, because there are certain statements that's made in the conscious community. Automatically, I know it's Walter Williams, and he's the grandfather of pseudo, far as I'm concerned, in the conscious community. I'm going to give you one example. He says that Moses Maimonides, the Spanish philosopher Moses Maimonides, invented the Old Testament. How can he's throwing away, hold
on, you gotta let's recover from that,
he's throwing away Second Temple Judaism altogether. And everybody's repeating what he's saying, and they're following him.
Yeah, I heard somebody the other day, man, said that Christianity, the Bible, and Jesus was invented at Nicaea.
That's Walter Williams once again.
I was like, what do you do with all the families and manuscripts? The Bible was written like 1,000 years. I mean, then they said, anyway. You go ahead, brother. I'm just confused.
Well, just since we're on Nicaea, I think that's the funniest thing.
That's like the junk drawer.
Yeah, I mean, they made everything happen. And so what we got to encourage people to do is simply ask questions and ask for sources. So, for instance, you say, all right, when they say stuff like the Bible's been tainted, okay, where?
Absolutely.
Okay, where has it been tainted? Show me, and then what's your source that can show that it's been tainted? Okay,
absolutely.
Well, Christianity was invented at the Council of Nicaea. Okay, well, what about the Edict of Milan? Mm-hmm. Because, and so when to expose pseudo-scholarship, you have to do it with questions, but you have to understand primary sourcing and be knowledgeable yourself. So when they tell me something was invented at 325, but I already know that an edict about the religion was issued 12 years prior, then it's a logical fallacy to come to the conclusion that something was invented at 325 when Constantine issued an edict about the thing you're saying that's invented in 325.
Y'all put out a post and about, I don't know if it was about the Trinity, I can't remember, but the guy said the Trinity was created at 325. And I said, well, brother, I have a document from the 2nd century after the apostles by a North African church father named Tertullian, where he's talking about Trinitas, which is the Latin word for Trinity. So I'm like, when we're talking about the fact that the church fathers, then Origen took up strengthening the doctrine of the Trinity.
He was African too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Irenaeus took on strengthening the doctrine of the Trinity. And so the doctrine of the Trinity was handed down by the apostles. And the Didache points to that reality, which is basically, that's one of the oldest documents talking about the teachings of the apostles, wrapped up in that's not inspired, but a commentary on the ideologies in the New Testament, to the point where the document was so strong they thought it should have been canon. And so when we talk about pseudo-scholarship, one of the things that we specifically talk about is, what are your sources? Where do you get your sources from? And let's talk about what a primary source is, because we've used that in a couple of videos, and I've heard people say that. What's a primary source?
Well, a primary source is a source from the time period. People have to understand, from the time period, if you're dealing with anything from, let's say, the 4th century Nicaea, who was in the room? Whoever was in the room at that time would be considered a primary source. The canons that came from that would be considered a primary source today. A secondary source would be someone later on that's interpreting what happened then. And that's kind of a slow way, a quick way to put it.
Gotcha. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would just say, just practically, when someone like Walter Williams may say something about Nicaea that's incorrect, I'm looking at his footnotes, and I don't find any.
No.
So when I'm reading what he says about African spirituality, one of his books, and then there's no footnote there, then essentially what you're doing is you're just taking that person's word for it.
Right.
Which is the very thing they criticize Christians for doing.
Right.
And we're saying, no, we actually fight against blind faith. That faith and reason come together. Like, we're told to give a reason for the hope that lies within us. So Christians are supposed to be thinkers. We're supposed to think. And so therefore we want to ask you, like, where's that footnote? All right, if there's a footnote there, you're now able to reference that book. Then did that book have a reference? And so from there, you can kind of go back and trace back to get to a primary source.
Yeah.
So it's just practical stuff like that. So therefore, you're not just going by someone's word and they say something like, again, Christianity was invented there, or the whole letter J thing, stuff like that. It's like, all right, you got a little truth where there was a council in Nicaea, but your dates are jacked up. And if your dates are wrong, your conclusion is wrong.
That's why.
And so we have to be able to engage them like that.
Yep, go ahead.
That's why I often tell people that timelines are important.
Yep.
If you understand timelines, nobody can just tell you anything. Nobody can just come and tell me that Carly B invented hip hop. It's impossible, because I can go back. I understand. I know who KRS-One is, Grandmaster Flash. I can go back and I understand certain things.
Cool Herc.
Cool Herc. Got to take it all the way back.
Got to take it all the way back.
So if we understand timelines, you don't have to be a historian. You don't have to be a scholar, but you just can't accept anything on blind faith. But what they do a lot in the conscious community is they borderline conspiracy theory. They say, oh, you just love a white man. You don't know it's in the Vatican. If it's in the Vatican and they're hiding it from everybody, how do you know it's there?
I know that's right.
This is problematic right here. But anything that they can't answer, they start going back, oh, it's in the Vatican. You don't know the white man's hiding everything.
What's interesting is when people tell me that Christianity came by Egypt, I say, give me a trajectorial document that helps us to see how it came out of Egypt. At what point in time? If it was created in Nicaea, then how are there church fathers who are Egyptian so you're saying the Egyptian church fathers were so stupid that they promoted a faith that they knew was ancestral ideologies that came out of Egypt? So you're saying Athanasius, who's from daggone Egypt, Augustine, who's from Egypt, they're so stupid. And see, that's the other thing, is that they make our own people seem to be stupid in the way that they promote us being ignorant enough to embrace it. And when we start talking about the African church fathers, they say, well, they were influenced by Latin culture. Well, you're being actually influenced by pseudo-white scholarship who has tried to whitewash Christianity, because they try to broad stroke North Africa as not North Africa, but Southern Europe or Latin. So instead of calling them the African church fathers, they call them Latin church fathers because they spoke Latin, which automatically connects them with the Roman Empire verbally. But that's like saying because we speak English and not our indigenous languages,
Yes.
that we don't have the capacity to think beyond the white supremacy that's been placed on us in American culture. And so all of these different types of fallacies sort of affect those things. And so that's why I'll go back to tell me when, give me documentation, and don't do rash comparisons, because there are narrative there are narrative comparisons or parallels in antiquity. So if you have these type of parallels, and what I mean by narrative parallels is things that people say that sound similar. Like when you talk about the 42 laws of Ma'at, that's not the same as the 10 Commandments or the 613. And so you mean to tell me they got 613 laws from 42 laws? And so when which are negative confessions, not ways of life that point to how to love God and how to love neighbor, because that's how the 10 Commandments is broken up: loving God, loving neighbor. How the law, the 613, is broken up into. It's broken up into based on Deuteronomy 6:4-6, and it's broken up into Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. Love the Lord your God with all your soul, with all your heart, with all your strength. Boom. The second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. And so Christians, we have to begin to learn how to begin to not allow our faith to be punched into a gutter because we're not able to answer questions. Give yourself freedom and room, I would say, to be able to say, hey, I may not know all of that now, but let me get my head around some of this. And when you back up from the quickness of the argument and the suspicion that's among black people, a lot of African Americans are suspicious. Yeah. And so they prey on the suspicions of blacks, of white people, by giving them false information in order to indoctrinate them away from the faith and to indoctrinate people away from biblical scholarship.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think the thing that a lot in the conscious community don't realize they're doing is they're undermining their own argument about black intellectualism and black scholarship.
Absolutely.
Because if you're saying, and then if you're going as far as to say the black man is God or the black woman is God, then you have all these historic Africans that believed in Christ. Or even if you just take the slave trade, for example, and you haven't read a slave narrative. When you read the slave narratives, you know that when these African people were able to read for themselves, they were able to come to the conclusion that the version of Christianity that the slave owner was given did not match what was actually in the Bible. So when you don't understand that, you're undermining your own argument, because you're essentially calling all of our ancestors stupid and that they were too lazy to read. And so there were tons of, we talked about the councils, this is basically two African men arguing over the essence of Jesus. Therefore, Christianity was already in existence and African Christians had already existed. So the idea that it's a white man's religion or that we got just simply doesn't match timelines. It doesn't match geography. It doesn't match history. So we got to be able to teach people within the church the art of argumentation and asking poignant questions to get them to actually provide a source. Because if they can't, they're the ones operating according to blind faith, not us.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, when people call themselves a Pan-Africanist, they don't realize that that's rooted in Christianity.
Absolutely.
When you look at
almost all the Pan-African fathers were Christians.
Absolutely. When you look at Alexander Crummell, with other brothers, Blyden from Blyden. I mean,
Africanus Horton.
All of those, and then when you look at W.E.B. Du Bois, who influenced him. When you ask Garvey who influenced him, it was Christian bishops, Episcopal and Presbyterian bishops, that influenced his movement of even framing his ideologies about Pan-Africanism.
Right.
And so when we talk about that, which Noble Drew Ali was influenced by them as well because of Pan-Africanism, and he got his ideology of the Asiatic black man from thinking through and meditating, even though he went on to the Egyptian mystery system, quote unquote, that he went over there and went through some system with some Egyptian priests. But I'm saying all of that to say it's very, very important for us to understand this. Some tools, you guys, we always trying to help people to basically have some things that are helpful to you as you begin to, where do I begin in pertaining to church history? There's some places where we say to begin. A couple of places is, this is one of my professors in seminary, this is a pocket guide to the church. It basically walks you through church history. It's real small, but it walks you through church history from from the time of the church fathers, the time of the apostles, actually, Jesus and the apostles, all the way up to today. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And that's really good by D. Jeffrey Brigham. Also, we got another one by Nathan Feldmeth. And this is another pocket guide, and this is over 300 terms clearly and concisely defined, and it has what my brother always says, timelines and dates. And see, you could see these are receipts, family. You understand what I'm saying? These are called receipts. Why don't y'all smile in the camera? Look at these receipts, all right? We got that one. Then we have another one called Know the Creeds and Councils by my boy Justin Holcomb. Beastly book, right? Another book that's helpful with those ideas to help you to recognize this idea of us really helping you to know those things. A couple of more, and then I'm done. Of course, you know we've been recommending How Africa Shaped the Christian Mind by Odin. I've seen this put in a lot of work because this helps you, those books help you understand general church history, but then this has specificity to North African history and the legacy of the gospel, having had basically been going strong for 1,000 to 1,500 years after Jesus Christ. And then last but not least, it's so many up here that I could just recommend. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with it, but one of the things I recommend this. I recommend this because one of the things I'm hearing some people talk reckless in the streets about the black church, talking real reckless, like the black church has never done anything, never built institutions. Well, this book by C. Eric Lincoln and this other brother, this is a book that helps you to walk through, man, this is black church history, black American church history. And so now we're trying to help you to get resourced on general church history, African church history, and black church history in America, so that now we can begin to understand timelines, but then we can also see that people who are actual scholars have their information rooted in actual historical documents that help you to grow and understand and develop in your understanding of things, so you're not all over the place in things. I mean, I can pull so many more up, but you said pull it out, but I mean, it's a couple more. I mean, you got the history of Christianity in Africa. And so you can say Christianity wasn't in sub-Saharan Africa. Right. Well, right here it talks about Christianity in sub-Saharan Africa. You understand what I'm saying? And so again, I just want us to begin to be able to be equipped by the gospel of Jesus Christ and by understanding history from a perspective that reflects what God wants us to be connected with in order to understand true history. So again, I'm hoping you stay tuned into these videos. We got so many more videos coming, so much more content coming. And don't forget, the Frequency Conference is coming up in October. It's going to be amazing, 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 amazing. All Jesus Everything. We're going to talk about that in further videos. God bless you. Thank you, brothers, for being with me here on the Woke Church video series. God bless you. See you next time.